the coach had around 50 passengers. Obviously the majority teenage children on the way to school. So yeah, it's been a really traumatic day, and it was a traumatic experience as a reporter. Really, not the kind of thing you expect to report on a local newspaper. So our thoughts are with all the children, and obviously the families and the friends of the two people who sadly died.
Now, witnesses have described to the Times this morning how they saw pupils clambering out of the smashed windows of the school bus, which crashed yesterday on the M53 in the Wirral. 15-year-old Jessica Baker and the coach driver, Stephen Shrimpton, both died in the accident. We can speak now to Jamie Bowman, who is content editor for Wirral Globe News. Good morning, Jamie.
Good morning.
I understand there's a lot that we don't know about what happened yesterday, but just talk us through what we do know happened on that school run.
Well, we understand it was around just after 8 o'clock yesterday. There were two coaches travelling from the Chester area in sort of northwards into Wirral on their way to two schools, West Kirby Grammar School, which is a girls' school, and Caldy Grange Grammar School, which is a boys' school. We believe that the coaches were travelling in convoy along the M53, and obviously one of those coaches ended on its side, overturned. We've been told by the police that there was not another vehicle involved, and we're led to believe, although the police have not confirmed this and they've asked us not to speculate, but we do understand the driver may have had what's been termed as a medical episode, which caused the coach to overturn. And the coach had around 50 passengers. Obviously the majority teenage children on the way to school. So yeah, it's been a really traumatic day, and it was a traumatic experience as a reporter. Really, not the kind of thing you expect to report on a local newspaper. So our thoughts are with all the children, and obviously the families and the friends of the two people who sadly died.
Yeah, and it is awful, isn't it? Jessica Baker being named as the 15-year-old girl, and Stephen Shrimpton as the coach driver. I mean, and what we have to remember in this, of course, it's the other coach, isn't it? Those children would have seen it all unfold, and the trauma that they would have suffered, it is just very difficult for them to process.
Yeah, obviously there's two fatalities, but it's one of those where it feels like there's a lot of victims and a lot of people affected. We actually had staff in our newspaper who knew people who were on the coach, or knew children who were on the coach, and obviously it when something like that happens, it becomes a very personal story to report on. I'm sure you've been in similar positions as reporters. It was incredibly upsetting and worrying for all of us. So yeah, you're right. I think there's going to have to be a lot of support and help for not just the families of the children who were on the coach which overturned, but all the children in the whole school, I imagine. And the police and Wirral Council have said that help will be made available over the coming weeks, and the council have committed to saying whatever needs happening, they will do it. So fingers crossed, that support is there.
And it's so tough. I mean, those kids, it's a big catchment area, isn't it? They travel 20 miles to get to school. There is no other option than going on the bus, I wouldn't imagine. So that's really tough for them, for when they do have to return to school, those young people who've witnessed this. But we mustn't forget, of course, as you rightly point out, Jamie, there were up to 50 people on this bus. We know, unfortunately, about these two people who did die, but many injured. What do we know about the extent of their injuries?
Well, Merseyside Police told us that there were around 58 people involved in the incident, including the two fatalities. We know that two children were taken to Alder Hey Children's Hospital, which is in Liverpool, quite away from the main incident, and another two casualties were treated at Wirral's Arrow Park Hospital. Sadly, the police told us that one of those injured is a 14-year-old boy who's received what was described as life-changing injuries. So obviously our thoughts and and prayers are with him and his family, and hoping he pulls through. I mean, there was an amazing response from the emergency services. It has to be said, they were on the scene, within minutes, and an emergency training centre in Wallasey, in Wirral, was used to treat many of the children with minor injuries, the ones that didn't have to be taken to one of the main hospitals. We even heard reports that there was actually a picket outside the Arrow Park Hospital yesterday. As you know, many medical workers have been striking over the last months, and that picket was immediately broken up, and the workers returned to work to help out with what was declared a major incident at the time. So our thanks must go to the emergency workers who really rushed into action, and obviously our thoughts are with those who remain in hospital this morning.
Absolutely. Jamie, thank you so much for talking to us.
No, thank you very much.
Take care. That's Jamie Bowman, who is content editor for the Wirral Globe newspaper.